Hello everyone, welcome to Yadnya Investment Academy. Today we are going to discuss on the topic what is Benami property and understand if your property is Benami or not. Benami is a Hindi word which means a property without a name. Here property includes any asset that has an intrinsic value. These include real estate, jewelry, financial securities, artifacts, etc. All categories of assets are covered. Even cash deposits could qualify to be Benami. In the simple terms, Benami transaction is a transaction where the property or asset is purchased in the name of the person who has not paid for it. The person who has given the required money for the said transaction is not named in the transaction, but the property is held for the direct or indirect benefit of the person who has provided its payment. For example, if Raghu wants to buy an apartment but don't want his name to be appeared in the deal, then he can buy the same in the name of his sister Lakshmi, but he himself would be using the apartment. This is called Benami transaction because Raghu has paid the money but the owner is his sister. Now the question comes, but why would anyone buy any property in someone else's name? Benami properties are typically bought in three situations. First is when someone has large amount of untaxed cash that they want to convert into another form, but holding it in one's own name would mean that there are chances he or she may come under taxpayer scrutiny. So typically such properties are held in the name of distant relatives, friends, employees, etc., who are otherwise unlikely to attract any scrutiny. In such cases, the real owner could typically keep the original papers of the property in his or her possession and execute a power of attorney which will allow the sale of property whenever required. Many a times, shell companies that existed only on papers are used to buy such property. Secondly, this concept is used to do fraudulent activities. For instance, if a person is hugely under debt or has taken large loans, he would purchase property in the name of someone else so that creditors could not attach such property for recovery, a good way to run away from liabilities. Thirdly, this malpractice is also adopted by corrupt officials who take bribe in kind, such as land, property, car, jewelry, etc. Since they cannot directly get these on their or their family member's name, the same is done in the name of their in-laws, cousins, close friends, etc. Even recently, after demonetization, there were news reports of people depositing their black money in old currency note in other person's account to save themselves from eye of income tax office. But we know for sure that all such transactions, that is buying property in someone else's name, are not done for wrong intentions and are not Benami. Many such transactions are done just to save tax within limitations of law and for superstitious purposes as well. So the next question comes, what are Benami transactions? As per Prohibition of Benami Property Transaction Act, that is PBPT Act, which came into force from 1st November 2016, a property is named as Benami property if any of the following conditions are fulfilled. First is a property which is purchased using a fictitious or a fictional name means the owner does not exist. Example, like we are seeing in many recent income tax raids post demonetization, where people have created bank accounts in the name of fictitious people and deposited their old 500 and 1000 rupees note there. Secondly, a person holding the property has no knowledge about the transaction mode or ownership of the property. Example, if Raghu bought a property in his uncle's name and paid full price, but uncle doesn't even know that he is the owner. Thirdly, a person who has provided the required money for the transaction is no longer traceable. For example, a property is registered under Raghu's name, but the person who paid the money is fictitious and doesn't exist. Then the Raghu holds a Benami property. Last and maybe the most common condition is when a person holding the property or the person on whose name the property has been transferred has not paid the money or the price of the property in question is paid by someone else. Example, Raghu buys the property and pays the entire amount but puts the property under his sister Lakshmi's name. Lakshmi may be the participant in this whole transaction. This is a Benami transaction, and Lakshmi would be Benamdar, which means owner of a Benami property. And now we will discuss the next question, that is, what are the exceptions and exclusion scenarios when the property will not become Benami and will be legal as per the Act. Here are the few conditions. First is when any individual transacting in the name of his or her spouse or any of his or her children, excluding married daughters, and consideration of such property is paid out of known source of income of the individual, then such property is not Benami. Secondly, the transferred property with partly transfer procedure will be excluded from being considered as Benami property. Suppose you own a property and is willing to change its ownership. You have initiated the necessary property transfer formalities legally under Property Transfer Act. Then your property will be legal and will not be Benami. General power of attorney properties will be exempted from making Benami property. General power of attorney property means that property which has been given from one person to another under the rule of power of attorney. If there is a legit paperwork of power of attorney procedure against a property, then it will be excluded from being considered as Benami property. In case the property is purchased using known sources of fund as joint ownership with wife, children, siblings, including brother or sister or lineal descendant, then such property is also not Benami. In the case of HUF, Karta or any other member of HUF owns or held any property for his benefit or for the benefit of family members, and consideration for the same is paid out of known sources of income of HUF, then that property is also not Benami. And last is Benami property declared under income declaration scheme of 2016 will no longer be treated as Benami property. Now comes an important and a pertinent question. Is my property a Benami? See, determination of actual status of property lies with the competent authorities. However, few factors which shall taken into considerations are: first, the source of fund. Is the source of fund which you used for making the payment of the property is disclosed or not to tax authorities? Second will be your intention behind buying property in the name of other person. And third factor would be who has the actual possession of the property and who is the custodian of the documents of the property. And last would be disclosure of the income from the property, if any, while filing the income tax return. So if all these factors lead to the fact that property is purchased not to hide black money or any fraudulent activity, the said property will not be treated as Benami property. So now with Benami Transaction Act, which we will discuss in detail in our upcoming video, and demonetization, which will make it difficult to transfer the Benami property, and promised push by Prime Minister, we could see significant unearthing of black money from Benami properties. With that thought, we will close this topic. If you have any question, please do write in the comment section below. Till then, have a great day ahead.